Okay, so at this point, I would like to bring up to the stage our keynote speaker this morning. Again, she is a talent optimization expert, Amy Cappellanti-Wolf. She is a Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer at Symantec, and she specializes in organizational design and development leadership, which for simple guys like me, that means help businesses thrive during deep transformation. Please help me welcome to the stage, Amy.
Well, good morning, early risers. I flew in from California last night, and so it's early for me, but it was even earlier for you, and I got up this morning and saw you all down here having breakfast. So thanks for making the time today. I know this is a really critical juncture for you all, and while you all are talking about talent management, and I want to try and demystify it for you, because there's some really basic ways to think about talent management, much like you guys think about your jobs every day and how you run your businesses. As you run your business, you think about who's my customer? What's my value proposition? What's the solution that I'm providing that differentiates me against the competition? How do I retain my customers? How do I upsell my customers? How do I keep them engaged and coming back for more? That same relationship you have with your customers, you want to have with your employees. It's the same type of questions, the same type of programs, the same types of pull and push that you have with your customers, you want to have with your employees. So today's discussion is going to kind of walk you through the tenets of how to think about that and break it down into what I think are simple parts and parcels, because it can be pretty overwhelming when you think about it. So let's first start with, what is integrated talent management? I know it sounds super sexy, integrated talent management. What exactly is it? We'll put down in its simplest parts, it's about acquiring, managing, and developing and engaging employees, and aligning those employees towards your largest priorities. Because if you don't have a strong set of goals, where you're headed as a business, then employees won't know who they're coming to work for and what they're going to go do. So it's taking all of those talent practices together about how you go hire, how you onboard, how you develop, how you ensure that they have a good career path, and how they're also aligned towards where you want to go as a business. And why is this important right now? Well, as we were just talking about, it's complex out there. There's lots going on globally. There's lots going on locally. There's tons of acquisitions happening. There's a big demand for talent. There's everyone out there looking for the gaps that we have in talent today. So now more than ever, you've got to get really clear about what you want to do from a talent perspective, because it's getting more competitive out there. And as you know, you've got to do it in a very systemic way in how you approach it. So again, I want to give you those parts and parcels on how to think about that. The other thing to think about is the demand is higher than in supply. So as you can see in this chart, unemployment's really low. So you're all out competing for the same talent. And I'm certain the insurance industry is always trying to show that you're ahead of it, that you're a place people want to come and build a long-term career. So you have to really be out there even more so than other perhaps industries to really get people excited about coming to work in your group with a very, very constrained demand out there, or supply. And the last thing, as you all know, is that there's more people than there are more jobs available than there are people. So how do you ensure that you are meeting that demand in your organization? So let's break it apart. So this is one of my least favorite slides, but it shows you how complex this can be if you think about the whole end of talent management. So let me walk you through this, and I'm going to unpack 4 what I think are really critical aspects of talent management. So first of all, you got to make certain you have a clear business proposition. What is it you're trying to do from your strategy? Are you about growing rapidly? Are you about managing your margins? Are you about keeping what you've got and just expanding on your cross-sells? What is your overall business strategy? What markets are you entering? What's really critical for you? And from that, you begin thinking about, what's the kind of workforce I need? Where am I locating that workforce? Where can I best find that talent? Then you work your way into all the things that go along with the capability that I'm looking for in terms of key skills. Do I want hunters? Do I want fishers? Do I want people who are really good at sales enablement? Do I want folks that are financially astute to help us go into new markets? So begin thinking about key capabilities and skills. Then you work your way down towards what types of development do you have in the organization? How do you keep refreshing those skill sets? How do you ensure that you've got a place that people are going to continue to grow and contribute? And along that stuff, you've got talent acquisition, which has got to be really connected to the business. They can't be a bunch of recruiters on the side. They have to be deeply ingrained in what's happening in the business. And then what you also have are the ways by which you reward and incent and ensure people are competitive to the market. So all that kind of goes together around a whole talent management system. And I want to take this very complex chart and break it down to something that's simple for you to understand and for me to actually talk about. So what are those talent enablers? So the first one I mentioned is about workforce planning, and that's all about the demand of what you need in terms of your workforce, where you need them to be situated, what you need in terms of capability. Next one's around talent supply and acquisition. So what's really, really important right now is that you have a strong brand by how you attract people, and you've got a way by which to build relationships out in the market. Because very often recruiters, at least where I've tend to work in, tend to just go to active candidates that are out searching, and you want to try and build relationships with passive candidates, because very often passive candidates are the one that maybe aren't looking but have a particular skill you want to go after. You want to also think about organizational and individual development. And this is around what do I need to build in the organization in terms of key skills, and then what I need to do individually. And as many of you have probably been reading in the digital age, about 41% of the work that we do today will no longer be around 10 years from now. So how do you ensure you're staying ahead of the curve in terms of technology, making certain that you are refreshing your organization and what you need to do in that organization to be successful? And the last piece is around performance and succession, which is a really hot topic right now in talent management. There's a lot of conversations around, at the end of the year, do we all do performance reviews in this room? By hands, yeah? So, it's like the dreaded, the manager hates them, the employee hates them, because at the very end of the year you get a rating, and sometimes it's a big surprise, or sometimes people have never even had a conversation with their manager, and so there's a lot changing in that part of the talent management process, and I'll walk you guys through, because it can be something, if you do it always on, always available, it tends to be a way to manage your business just like you'd managing your financials, your bookings, your billings. It's a constant way of how you have conversations with your employees. So let's talk a little bit more about workforce planning. So first of all, what is it? Okay, so first of all, this is about identifying key skills. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So where I come from in the world of technology, we're looking a lot around software and software as a service. How many of you belong to Amazon Prime or one of those the subscription services that allows you to get all you want when you need it, as you need it? Well, the same thing in where we work in technology is that software is king right now. So how do I think about what kind of capability do I need to build in my business so that when people go and buy security practices from the company I work for, I've got the right kind of capability helping support that. It's also around making certain you've got constant workforce plans happening. So very often, I don't know how many of you work this way, but often I need a requisition, I need to open it up quick. And very often you manage your business by when an opening becomes available, how do you go fill that opening very quickly? But how often do you take a step back and say, really, what capabilities do I need in this location? How does this align to my real estate footprint? How does this align to what's happening in my customer set? Where's the best skill set required to support that customer? And how do I ensure I'm thinking about the most important roles? I don't know what the most important roles in your organizations are. They could be hunters, they could be people who are helping with financial scenario planning. In my world, it's software. It's also in the development of selling into the big enterprise markets and the small medium business market. So I need different capabilities in those parts of the business. So it's really helping you think about what do you need, and then making certain you've got the right kind of rewards available to that talent so you retain them. And rewards aren't just about monetary. They can be around recognition. They can be around development. So the workforce plan, you can break it down to its parts and parcels, which lends itself to these three pillars. First of all, what are your pivotal roles? And pivotal roles are things that are anchor, things that you're going to need over the next three to 5 years. So maybe some people can shout out to me, what are critical roles in your organization that you would say, I got to get this right over the next 3 years in order to sustain or build my business? What titles or roles come to bear? Producers? Account managers? So revenue generators is what I'm hearing, producers and account managers, right? So if that's really critical for you right now, how do you begin to build that plan so that you can start to think, do I build it within? Do I go buy it? Do I borrow it? So begin thinking about what you need in order to build that capability in the organization. And then you've got to think about succession beneath that. So if I've got people that are earlier in career that I want to build towards that, what kind of capabilities do I need to put in place for them? Exposure, experience, opportunities. And then the third part is looking at where and why in terms of where do I declare my growth, where do I go after to get that kind of growth, and how do I establish the right kind of hiring and backfill plans. So it's a holistic process by which you set out a 3-year 3-year plan. Things change, things get quick, there's a lot of agility to this stuff, but if you do it right, you can begin to say, these are the skills I need to continually call for, and then you go back and forth between demand planning and labor supply and action plans, because as you need demand, your action plans may change a bit in terms of where you go after that labor. So in the world that I live in, there's a lot of effort related to contingent workforce, because very often it's easier to sometimes go and get someone temporarily to understand what you need from a staff augmentation perspective. And there are other times where you want to go after that talent and make certain you hire them full-time and bring them on board. So you've got a lot of variables as you think about what kind of workforce plan you put in place. Another key example would be the work you do on talent supply and building your pipeline. So, this is all about, getting out ahead and building those relationships with the talent in the market. So very often, the manager says, I need somebody right now, immediately, I'm dying, we're gonna really impact our revenue if we don't get this person today. So how do we, as managers, get smarter about, one, where do I have attrition concerns, where do I have retention concerns, and how do I get clear about the roles that I know I always have to keep open and available? How do I make certain that as hiring managers, I've got a real clear view of what's available to the market, and I build relationships in that market, and that can be everything from inviting them into your particular location and just having a lunch and learn to talk about your business, as well as build some capability in the community of what you do. So when something does become available, they know you, they know who you are, and then we're likely going to come if you ask them to come in for an interview. But it's great in that deeper relationship you have with your potential, maybe customers that now may become employees of yours. So it's a constant outreach, it's a constant marketing, just like you spend money in co-marketing or investing in your business related to how you generate demand in your customer pipeline. I would encourage you to do the same thing as you think about the potential employees you have in your network. As I mentioned, those employees can come from customers, neighbors, community, wherever you, and universities, but wherever you think you need to start to build that relationship, do it soon, do it now, because there's already probably competitors in that same talent pool as you, and you want to differentiate yourself. The next thing I think about is how do you put this all together? And this is, I think, the money slide as it relates to all the different aspects of how you think about bringing talent on. So first, it's about leveraging your brand. And we've talked a little bit about leveraging brand, but this is really critical because I think in the industry you all work in, you have to really differentiate why come to work with us, what are you going to get out of it, what are you going to learn, what are you going to contribute. And very often people want to be paid a fair salary, they want to work on hard and interesting work, and they want to work with people that will make them better and help them learn more. Because everyone in this world we live in today want to learn fast and continue to be active in how they build their skill set. So be clear about what your value prop is. Where I've worked in the past, I've been at Disney, I've been at Pepsi, I've been in Sun and Cisco, and now I'm at Symantec. And each of those organizations had a particular mission. Disney was all about fantastic vacation experiences. So it was hard to kind of show up in a bad mood at Disney because eventually you were there to help people have a wonderful vacation experience. At Symantec, it's all about fighting the bad guys, the people that are trying to infiltrate our data, so the hackers. So people get really excited about coming to work where we are because it's about something that's big and bigger than all of us. So how do you create that same kind of brand for what you do, and how do you find that hook so that people want to come to work with your particular firm? The next thing is around building the pipeline. As I mentioned, this is not about just going on to LinkedIn or whatever you guys use to acquire, but it's also about going out and building different types of platforms. So what's really hot right now is, and has always been, but now we're showing a really clear delineation between business performance is diversity and inclusion. Because right now we have a lot of different opportunities in the market to bring different talent into our businesses. And because there's a talent supply challenge, how do you open up your pipeline to look at different types of talent in the organization? And sometimes we have someone who's super high potential but doesn't have the skill set. How do you ensure that you can look at that person and bring them in and do some development versus trying to buy the ready-made talent? This requires you to look at different talent pipelines, different platforms, do a lot of work on university recruiting because it's a group of employees, potential employees who want to come off campus and immediately invest and be invested in and be able to contribute quickly to the organization. We look at diversity platforms, lots of different ways to attract. So I would say, as you think about recruiting, think about the full spectrum of where you need to go after to get that type of talent. Next thing is around establishing diverse candidate slates and panels. And this is all about when you bring in talent into your organization, either for the recruiting practices or for when they just come in to get them onboarded, you want to make certain they feel like they're in a place that they can be heard, that their voice matters, that they are considered to be part of a bigger organization related to how people interact with each other. So what I always encourage is that when you have job openings, you have diverse panels of people interviewing these candidates, so they know that they're not, if they are diverse or not, that they know that people coming in will be celebrated for their diversity. And two, you want to make certain that you have a wide mix of different talents, experiences, cultural backgrounds, ethnicity, because they're going to bring in better solutions. Especially in the work you all do, because you're consumer-oriented as well as enterprise-oriented. You want to reflect your consumer base. And sometimes you're going to go into new markets when you want to make certain the solutions you provide align towards the type of customers you want to eventually either retain or engage with. So it's really a critical value and business proposition. And very often in Silicon Valley, where I reside, it's been a man's world. It's been a lot around going out and not really looking at women or diverse candidates to bring into the business. And now we're finding that there's a big value proposition to it. So I would encourage you to really take the time to learn what's available into your market and go out and seek it. And the last thing is around hiring, establishing hiring team charters. And this may be basic for you, but it's something we often and commonly miss, is like, what are the criteria? What's the role? Because nothing is worse is when you hire somebody for a position and nobody was clear about what exactly does that position require. Are we all aligned around the key and critical talents we need in order to make that position successful? And are we clear about what the criteria is? So when we all make the decision on who we hire, we've all aligned around what was most important. So it's everything from the questions you ask, what you reinforce. Nothing's worse than being in an interview and you've been asked the same question by 6 different interviewers. So getting really clear about what you're going after. And then I'm a big believer in calibration sessions. There's been times where we all interview somebody and we walk in the hallway and we do thumbs up, thumbs down. And that doesn't really give you the full flavor of what that particular candidate brings to bear, nor does it allow to have sort of that fulsome discussion you'd have if you had the interview team in a room. So I know it sounds basic and probably things you already do, but I can't reinforce for you enough. We've had situations where we hired somebody and it comes to bear that nobody really thought that was the right candidate, but nobody had the robust discussion to say, is that truly the right candidate? So all those things related to making clear what your brand is, how you build your pipeline, how you ensure you've got the right kind of diversity and inclusion, and how you think about your hiring practices and who you bring on board, and really clear hiring criteria and role clarity is going to help make the hiring process and the onboarding process that more effective. And oh, by the way, in terms of onboarding, typically, if people aren't onboarded in a way where they felt like they belonged and they were really clear around how to onboard into the company, they're gone after their first year. So there's lots of studies out there that says if you get all this right and you get people onboarded properly, they're going to stay longer, they're going to be retained, they're also going to be better in terms of the engagement and contributions that they offer. And up here is just a couple of examples about the multi-tiered approach. So here's the value prop I work with. It's around the mission of who we serve in terms of fighting the bad guys. It's around the fact that we all work really well together and that we are a group that is collaborative and that it's what we kind of drive to support our customers. As an example of hiring charters, you can use whatever you want to use, but we use really documented approaches. This is all online and available, so we can have it available at a manager's touch. It's also on mobile, so managers can real-time give feedback about their interview experience. And then it's around the diverse hiring channels. And I was mentioning earlier, we use all these different types of diverse hiring channels. So I can find early in career, I can find perhaps women that are hard to find because they're in technology positions that wouldn't normally raise their hands. I look for all types of different diversity. So I would encourage you for the organizations that have the money to invest is go out and find those hiring channels because they do make a difference and you have to invest and nurture in them. How many of you all do university hiring and recruiting? Do you hire much off of campus? Okay, super competitive, and the worst thing you can do is show up to campus to recruit for an intern and then never convert, or just show up, have a great conversation, and then never hire. So it's really critical that you build I believe, fewer, deeper relationships in university recruiting, so you can really nurture those relationships, both with professors and students and student organizations, and use that as a hiring channel for you, because they bring innovation off of campus. They bring in energy and fresh eyes that you might not have in the firm, and that's something you have to build over time to build the credibility of a place that on campus is known for a hiring destination. So invest in that. We're doing a lot where I've worked in the past around early in career. They have a lot to offer. They have high expectations about their career path, but if invested in properly, they can yield big returns for you. The next thing is what is individual development and why is it important? So organizational development is looking at the whole and figuring out what am I driving towards in terms of key capabilities? What do we need to do organizationally? So some experiences I've had in the past that may resonate with you is, gee, right now in the company I work in, we are very enterprise focused and very consumer focused, but we aren't hitting the small, medium business. We don't have we have the products, but they aren't necessarily right sized for the small, medium businesses. We don't have the right selling channels. We need to build the selling channels, and we need to bring some DNA into the organization that understands how to sell into small, medium business. So I'm certain you've got your different segmentations of who you go after, but that's, to me, a large organizational development opportunity. It's a missed opportunity because we've got big, big deals at the enterprise level, and we've got the consumer that's more around numbers and size of ARPU, which is your revenue per user. But the small, medium is the sort of platform that if you've got that strong, that becomes a flywheel for you. So that's a great example of how you think about organizational development. How do you make certain that you have those types of skill sets in the organization? And then individually, it's the work you do with the individuals in the organization. And that's everything from helping employees be better in what their technical skills are every day. It's how you think about managers and helping managers be better at managing. Very often that's the hidden middle that's often pushed from above to go get work done and has stress from the bottom to help employees grow and learn and direct them. So how do you invest in those types of things? And to me, organizational development and individual development is not just a vertical, like what I just do in engineering, what I do in sales, or what I do in enablement, but it's also how they work together cross-organizationally so that they understand the impacts of a downstream effect in sales versus product versus delivery and how they all come together. So when you think about it, it's the whole and it's also the individual parts and parcels. Let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So the best way to learn is not sitting in a classroom. So I promise you, I'll be up here for a little bit longer, and I think what the best part that Kurt talked about is you're going to do some peer-to-peer panel interviews and discussions around what works best in your business. But I could say 10% of an employee's development ought to be around classroom. And I've been in situations where I said, well, just send them to the class and fix them. It doesn't fix them. It gives them frameworks, it gives them inputs, but really 10% of an employee's life cycle should be focused in a training class. Where they get more bang of the buck is the notion around interacting with others. And this is around best practice sharing. It's around what you guys are doing today in terms of networking now and over the next couple of days. It's around learning and building connections. And it's also doing things such as social learning and experiences. The biggest bang for your buck, is on-the-job experiential learning. How many times have we all kind of been put on a crazy ass project and said, I have no idea what I'm doing? But how many of you have accelerated because of it? So that's how you're going to learn. You're going to be thrown sometimes into the deep end. You're going to handle something new and different. You're going to be exposed to a problem that becomes an opportunity. But that's how you're going to learn, and how you do it across both organizations. Within your organization, you're going to connect with other people. And it's going to give you a chance to learn and also teach others through it. So organizations that perform best are the ones that will take risks, that support innovation, that support learning on the job, because people are going to naturally fail fast to learn faster and probably get to better productivity. So when I look at the development we do in an organization, I really look at where can I create those connections, those high-performing project teams. We're going to look at opportunities that need to be solved with people across the organization and not just in the silo. So as you think about your development, try and use this, and it's not difficult, but it does take discipline to think about what are the things I want to go solve and how do I bring a cohort of people in there to go solve it. And here's just an example of how to think about connecting strategy to leadership development. So you don't just do development in the absence of a business strategy. So as I mentioned earlier, if we in the organization I want to drive towards better maybe customer intimacy, a focus towards how do we get closer to our customer both at the relationship level at an enterprise, or maybe through a consumer way through better technology and intimacy with how you are pinged by your particular consumer usage. Who all here has iWatches? So my Apple iWatch really actually feels like my best friend because it tells me when I need to breathe or stand up even though I'm driving sometimes. It's not so good. But it tells me how long it's going to take me to get home from work. So all those types of technologies help us think differently around how we engage in our everyday work. Well, think about your learning strategy to be those types of things that are personal to you. They have to start first with the business strategy. So you're going to look at, one, where's the business going? What's important? What's the culture you want to drive towards? I'm certain you've all heard that culture eats strategy for breakfast every day. It does. First of all, you have to have a clear business strategy, then the kind of culture that will enable that business strategy. So that has to be part of your learning and development. Are you all about customer first, which has implications? Are you all about being more externally versus internally oriented? Are you about market innovation versus sort of market representation or repeating things versus building things? All those things play into your business strategy and the culture you want to create. And then you begin to build out what type of cohorts do you need to think about in terms of leadership development. There's your first-time leaders, the folks that maybe were fantastic sales leaders or sales employees, and suddenly become managers. And it's not always assumed that if you were good at a particular skill, you're going to be better at managing it. So clarity around what does it really take to be a first-time manager. Early and mid-level career, senior leaders, and executive leaders. And each of those cohorts need different things. So again, this is illustrative. So the first thing I think about is building out conversations, which is another word for performance. How do you constantly talk about having the conversation around where's the business going, where are your goals against that business, how are you ensuring that you're being agile in the moment because things change pretty rapidly, and ongoing conversations that are both course corrections, feedback in the moment, and as well as like development as you work through that given project. So it's constant conversations, and that should happen across the organization. It doesn't just happen once a year or twice a year. There's also things such as leadership success modules, which I believe you can deliver more quickly through mobile. There's lots of cool platforms out there. You don't have to create your own leadership success module, but those are things about how to think about diversity, how to think about conflicted discussions, and how do you have those powerful conversations to get to a better resolution. How do you think about engaging your employees differently? All those different types of modules you can have real time, and the days of the monolithic, go to this classroom for a week are gone, and they're more real-time learning on a mobile device, if you will, and they're available to you. You don't have to create them yourselves. The next piece is around manager boot camp, and I can't reinforce that enough. I've worked in lots of companies, as I mentioned, where people get promoted in that position and really are not equipped to go do it. So you have to really be clear about what it is to be a manager in your company, and then it's to be a destination for folks. And you got to take them through everything from how to onboard, how to hire, to how to think about diversity, to how to think about budgeting, how to think about looking across the organization and not just vertically. And this is something in some of the organizations I've worked in the past is an underserved population. So I would encourage that you have some way by which to create a refresh process to keep that manager current to what's happening in your business. There's things like Leadership Essentials, which is another approach, leading our way. So this is things that you might want to have either through your particular network or your organization, or you might want to leverage from Marshberry, which is what are the ways that you really want to make certain people lead in your organization. So where I've come from, there's everything from we're going to be highly collaborative, so we're not going to make a decision until we have a chance to look at what the downstream impacts are. We're going to move fast, so we're going to fail, and if we fail, we're going to learn from it, and we're going to celebrate it versus get fired for it, unless you've done it a couple of times. We're going to think about how do you actually build succession beneath you, so part of your accountability is showing you've got strong succession plans. All those things are things you have to identify so that people are aligning towards that type of work, and that's where you kind of build this capability in there. And then a big thing I think is business acumen. So often where I sit, we'll have people that don't understand when we talk about billings and bookings and margins and customer and competition and technology, lots of acronyms, or how we think about going to market and the routes to revenue. So how do you teach your employees and keep that constantly going on? And that could be you guys in the room hosting brown bag sessions over lunch or speaker series where you can be talking about what you're seeing in the market and get them thinking differently. And also, the more people understand the business, the more likely they'll be able to stay and engage and really contribute to the business. So we do a lot of those where I've worked in the past, and it's something I continually suggest, because leaders teaching leaders is a great way for all of you to learn as leaders, and also it shows the employees that you're really invested in sharing information. And then I do believe you should do accelerations for types of talent, for your high potential talent. And that's talent in the organization that may be a couple of layers down that you really want to accelerate their capabilities. So that may be focused training for those individuals, or getting them together as a cohort and using some of those experience opportunities to go solve big problems. When you're early in career, you want and you need some investment, and you also want to be solving big problems. And so when you bring people together, if you can orient them towards a big problem and actually apply it, you'll be better for the outcome, and so will that employee, because they'll have actually worked on something that's real they can take back with them. And of course, ongoing leadership coaching. And leadership coaching doesn't have to go hire a coach for 6 months and pay $30,000 for a coaching engagement. It can be peer-to-peer coaching. You can give people frameworks on how to think about, how do I help you with that particular market plan? How do I help you show up better in terms of how you present? I noticed that you lead with maybe advocacy versus inquiry. How do you ask more questions so people listen to your perspective? How do you think about data and using data for how you run your business or how you make your point? All those things you can actually do within a cohort in your organization, or you can bring someone from the outside, but that needs to be an ongoing thing. And I will say, once in my past, I had a boss, and we were talking about a couple of executives who weren't making it. And I felt very bad that they weren't making it. And how could we've lost that in the system? And my boss had said, well, it's because, at that levels, they should know better. Well, that to me isn't really, we should know better, but we don't always know better. So that self-awareness, and also that ability to have a cohesive environment where people will tell you when you're messing up and will help you through it, is really, really critical. So each of you in this room today have that capability in your organization. So don't waste it. It's really critical, and it will also keep people performing better because of it. And then throughout all this stuff, I'm very big on the diversity and inclusion programs to be driven through this. So we don't have a conscious inclusion offering per se in our organization. We deliver it through how we interview, how we give feedback, how we look at rewards and recognition. So we bake it into everything that we do. So we try to take the bias out of the system. So whatever you do around your development systems, bake that stuff in there, because it's a natural and good way of doing business. And it also shows your employees that this stuff matters to you. Okay, let's talk about my favorite topic, performance management. So I mentioned earlier about the review. We've all had that dreaded review where we had no idea what was coming, and we got it and it wasn't what we thought it was going to be, or we had to give it and we hated it. So what we're seeing now in the industry is the notion that to drive sustainable performance, you really have to have constant conversations. And it's not just about talking about what you didn't do well, but it's really getting clear about what you have to do in your job every day, how you have that constant conversation around how you're showing up, how you're performing, and how you iterate your goals as the business changes on a daily, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. People want feedback, and I think feedback is easier to give when you get it more often, and it's easier to give when you give it more often. So that constant ongoing conversation is really critical for employees to feel like they're connected to what's happening in the business. It also helps you identify critical talent needs. So if you're having that constant conversation, you'll know if you're on track for a particular project. You'll know if that person's engaged or on it or not, and it will allow you to start to do some succession planning if indeed you feel like someone maybe is not in the right role, or they're not maybe the person that you need to really, for long term for that business. So it's a constant conversation around performance. And how we think about it is in 4 different types of buckets. So it's setting really clear goals. You've all heard about SMART goals. I won't bore you with that, but keep them simple. Right now, we're working where I work around 3 to 5 big rocks for the company to go after. Everything from how we can look at our profitability differently than how we've done before, how do we improve our go-to-market, how do we think about the brand and improving our brand as a globally versus just within a consumer enterprise business. Whatever it takes for you, get clear about what your big, brands are, your particular company brand is within what you're running, or your goals are, so you can be clear with your employees about what those are. And then you do coaching constantly around what are those 3 to 5 goals that employees going to work on, and it's on demand, it's constantly open, always available. I don't know if you guys have performance tools or a system by which you manage performance. I think just a conversation and then being clear about what your goals are with others in your work team are really critical, so everybody knows what they're working on together. And then it's the constant reviewing and then rewarding. So it's a virtuous cycle. Sometimes we'll go back, sometimes we'll go forward, but keeping that conversation going all the time is what really matters, and making certain it's aligned towards the goals of the company. As things change, get people back on track as to what the new priorities are. And then an important piece I think about in terms of linking this all to the business. So very often in the past, I think people think of talent as something on the side, and it's something you do once a year or twice a year. It should be part of your integrated practices on how you run your business. Like I mentioned before, you do account planning, right? You look at what your forecast looks like for the week, the month, the quarter. You look at what are your goals towards the end of the year. You're going to meet those for your investors and shareholders, so to speak. You think about what's my capacity? What can we take on more of? The same thing goes with your talent conversations. When you think about your big strategy, and these examples up here are aligned towards quarterization, whether it's a fiscal year or calendar fiscal year. But you think about the first part of the year is really getting clear about our strategy, what markets we're playing in, what products we're going to be starting to sell differently, how we're going to retain and engage and cross-sell, all those things that you think about every day. You should be thinking about your talent. So as I think about the strategy, what do I need in terms of new talent? What do I need in terms of workforce planning? What do I think about in terms of development? Who are my hypos I need to keep an eye on? Who are the non-performers I need to do something about and make a difference on? So that's part of your Q1, which is your organizational and talent planning as you launch into the new year. Then throughout every quarter, you refresh it. You take a look and say, did I make the hires I said I was going to make? Did I invest in the people that I wanted to invest in? What's my retention rates look like related to my employees? If I identify top and bottom performers, am I retaining my top performers? And then how do I think about the work I need to do around assessing and rewarding and going back into the cycle? So it's like a wash, rinse, repeat. You do your business strategy, you do your people strategy. You check up on your business strategy quarterly, you check up on your people strategy quarterly. And the goals you have with your people should be measured as disciplined as you do your business goals, because they go together. So I would say establish an operating cadence. If you don't have this in place today, keep it simple, maybe the 2 to 3 business objectives and how they align to the people objectives, and then just constantly monitor it, invest in it, and refresh it. And there's lots of ways you can go after it. Some of the tools that I've used in my past are everything from talent calibration, where you have what's called a 9-box, which has performance and retention, or performance and potential. And you start to plot people on who are my high performers and people I want to retain for the future. Because you don't always necessarily want to retain the talent you have today for your future if you're changing the business and those people can't change rapidly enough. But it allows you to know, who am I investing in? Who do I need to make certain I have the right kind of development plans against? And it also helps you think about your reward strategy. And am I really comping the best and talent at the highest capability because they're delivering more for the company? So I look at talent calibrations as a really important part of that. And it's not just me as a manager doing my own people. It's me sitting with whoever the management team is to talk about who do we need to keep an eye on collectively that are either non-performers that we need to move up or move out, or people I want to invest in to grow into the business. It's also getting really clear about the leadership bench. Where do I have gaps? This person has no succession beneath them. How do I think about making certain there is succession, so if they win the lottery someday, we've got a good, resilient, sustainable plan in place? And it's also thinking about things like, what are the critical roles I always have to make certain I always understand that there's not single points of failure. And to a specific piece, and I won't go through this in lots of depth, but there's things like single points of failure. There's things like ready now and 3-year planning and critical roles. And what used to be is that every person on an organizational chart had beneath them who would be my successor. And very often, if you were doing the chart, it was like your number 2 or number 3, and they often were in your image. And the point being is that roles change too much, business changes too much. So to have a role that you're going to be able to fill 3 to 5 years from now, that role's going to change. So it used to be who's ready now, who's ready in a year, who's ready in 3 to 5 years. Now it's more around succession pooling. Who are your top performers? How do you start to grow and nurture them? And then what are the most important jobs in your business? What are the ones you have to make certain you always have succession for and capability in? And use that pool of people as the people you move across the organization, up and down the organization, so they're building those skill sets across the organization. And the last thing, as all of you know as operators, is don't have single points of failure. I can't tell you how many times we're in a talent review and we're doing compensation planning, and someone says, well, I got to juice them really big on equity or cash because if they leave, we're screwed. It's like, well, you don't want to be in those situations because you're beholden to give somebody lots of money who may not be even performing as strong, but they're the only person who can do that role. So work on knowledge management, work on making certain that there's more than one person knows how to go do that, and there's also more than one person that can succeed that position should they change. Things I'm certain all of you know, but when you get really fast into your business, you sometimes forget that there are material weaknesses if you don't get that stuff straight. And then how do you keep this stuff real? How do you make certain that is, okay, I put together a talent plan. What are the types of metrics I need to think about? Well, first of all, I understand you all have an opportunity to do pulse surveying with your organizations, constant listening. So I would say encourage you to always have constant conversations in your business. So it's everything from a pulse survey, which is typically a cross-section of employee feedback through a survey tool that gives you a good sense of what's on people's minds, what's important to them. You can do a whole, company census, which may be according to the size of your organization. Do you pulse your employees, all of them, all at one given time to get feedback? Focus groups is a great way. So a lot of what we do, where I'm at right now, is we're transforming our culture as well as our business strategies. So we've done a big survey that has about 60 questions, and then we've taken that survey and gone out to all the different global sites we have to get real feedback. And that's when you really learn about some of the things like, well, I never got my budget pushed down. Right? Or I can't hire because I've been told I can't afford it, but without a budget, how do I know that? So that's where you start to get really clear about what's happening with those employees that you may not understand with management layers in between. Look at talent analytics. Those are your things like, where am I losing folks? Who am I losing them to? When I make offers, who am I competing against, and when do I win, when do I lose? When can I begin to look at some prediction around, these people told me 6 months ago that they weren't happy and they've left. What have I done to go solve that problem? So use data as your friend to help you think about, where am I having upticks in terms of retention issues or attrition issues, and where I need to really double down on understanding why people are coming, why people are leaving. Next thing's around those top talent reviews, so constant calibrations. People's performance changes over time. So you have to have constant discussions around how are people trending to ensure you've got the right kind of sustainable business practices. And then the last thing I'd say is, you've got to make this part of your business cadence. You can't just lend it to, well, we'll talk about talent at the end of the year. It's got to be a part of how you run your business. And wherever you can create individual development plans makes a big difference. So when you've got people who feel like, gee, I have a clear sense of where I need to go, and it should be manager and employee-led. It's not the manager does it for the employee, and the employee shouldn't be out on their own. But creating development plans for your top performers, or people you've got a lot of investment for your future, is going to make them more likely to stay and contribute because they know that you're investing in for their future. So all those things around operating mechanisms, I would say pick a couple and test them out if you don't have them already, to learn how to understand how your employees are reacting to the work you're doing related to the talent and the business. And then I think I don't need to make this case for you all, but in the case you need to take this back to your organizations, why does this stuff really matter? Well, you can see the metrics. There's a real return on investing in your talent, whether it's turnover rates, whether it's people willing to stay in the business, whether it's ability to really meet your future workforce business needs. I mean, this is all the metrics you need to run your business to ensure that if you've got a strong talent management system in place, you're going to see better returns. So again, it's not just a good thing to do or nice to do, it's imperative to thinking about how you run your business. So with that, I've probably shared a whole lot with you all, and I was intentional in trying to give you some real specific examples of how this stuff works, because I think very often it gets overly complex and it doesn't need to be. So with that, I'd love to open up the room for some questions or stories you can tell around where this has worked or not worked for you. Yeah.
You talked about 10% classroom, 20%
Use the microphone. Oh,
excellent.
you get the box. This is really interesting. You get to throw it
giving
around.
back. 70% on the job. When we're bringing in 30 to 50% of our new colleagues have no prior insurance experience, what period of time would you measure that 10, 20, 70?
I'd say probably at the very beginning, you're probably doing a lot of training, right? Because you're learning how to use the product, how to sell, how to understand how the business runs. So I would say it's front end loaded at the first probably year. And I don't know the rapid pace of how you guys redeploy, redevelop the different types of solutions you're offering. But I'd say after that first year, they should understand the products and the framework. And you should always do boot camps. I mean, we always have yearly manager or sales boot camps because things change in terms of products, positioning, enablement. But then it should move into more of sort of, okay, what did you learn from that selling cycle you just went through? Or what did you learn around that product? And use it as more of a cohort to then take that framework and then begin to apply it and use that as a way to kind of circle back to say, was that successful? And use that as a way to feed it back into the development team, if you will. So I'd say the first part's front end loaded, and thereafter you should have refresh, but you should move more to the experience and exposure, because we all tend to learn a lot more when we're applying it on the job versus reading it in a book. Thanks for the question. You get a big star for being the first person to ask the question. I appreciate that.
Hi, what are your thoughts on giving equity to employees? Just generally speaking, how it affects morale and productivity and things like that.
Yeah, well, so where I come out of technology, equity is a big component of the reward system. We only give it to about 40 to 50% of our employees, and we find earlier in career folks really like cash versus equity. But as you move up the levels of management, they prefer equity. I think equity is great because, one, it gives you a sense of ownership in the business. You can see you make longer term decisions around how you think about the business versus short term gains. But it requires people to understand the business, so they understand that the macro of, gee, if I do this right and don't discount the heck out of it and really think about the longer selling cycle, I will in fact make the firm more effective in their margins. So I think equity is very powerful, but people don't always understand it. So if you give it, I wouldn't say sparingly, but thoughtful about what cohort's going to really appreciate that, and they understand how the work they do aligns towards that equity. I love to give it to everybody. There was a point in time back where everybody got equity, but as shareholders, they don't want to give away their firm too much, so we've had to be really choiceful about it. So we've done a lot of work about what do people really want in the rewards package, which lend us to maybe making it more around 40% at the higher levels. Does that answer your question? Great. Do a lot of you guys give equity in your business? And is it a long vesting cycle, or 2, 3 years? No? 5? Okay. What other questions? Yeah, right here. They're gonna
What's your thought on the annual bonus? Do you think it drives behavior, or do you think it just turns out to be something that's expected?
That's a great question. So his question is, what's my thought on annual bonus? Is it an entitlement, or does it really manage behavior? It really is. It's dependent upon the company and their business cycles. I've been in places where they do quarterly bonuses, and ones where they do yearly bonuses. Some where they do like a halfway through the year, they pay you like where it's projected at, and they true it up at the end of the year. And my view is it has to be aligned towards your business strategy. So like for ours, we do operating margins and revenue because you want to grow your business, but also be responsible about how you look at your operating expenses. And then our work, I think the work that matters most is aligning the work that the employee does towards their single site, towards how they can influence that. And so if people understand that we didn't perform, and therefore, even though your division performed better than the others, we have to look at the aggregate and pay people that way, you're going to get it less about entitlement and more about performance. But if people can't see what they do and how it aligns to the performance of the company, it does become an entitlement. So it's a lot of education, and there's going to be times where it gets overfunded and times where it gets underfunded, and you've got to be able to explain those too, so people see the juxtaposition of performance does matter because it does impact my ability to get my bonus in my wallet. I think they're good, but I also think they have to have teeth in them. They have to have accelerators and decelerators if you don't hit your performance targets. Otherwise, they become, another bit of cash you're not going to get a return on.
In terms of hiring university recent grads, we find that there's some geographic sensitivity around that, so maybe they're wanting to stay where they've gone to college for a year or two, and then suddenly they want to go be somewhere else.
Right.
So how do you financially make sense of, okay, we're going to have this person for 2 years, we're going to spend a year to a year and a half training them, am I really going to get utility out of them in a 6 to 12 month period? Maybe I should look at somebody that's been out of college.
Great question. Okay, so our question is, very often when you do university recruiting, their shelf life is short in terms of you may do a ton of investment and then they're gone after a year to 2 years to another company, right? Not staying with your firm. It's a great question. I think you have to look at, one, why are they leaving? Are they leaving because you've hired somebody who really does want to kind of have a lot of career, and there's a lot of career mobility here, so let's not kid ourselves. The notions of staying at the same company for 30 years is gone, so that notion of being more of a freelancer is very real. But you have to figure out, for your business, does university recruiting make sense? Is the return not worth the investment? Because if the average lifespan of a university relations recruit is a year, then I'd say then either you're not getting the right kind of stickiness to retain them because they're not finding things interesting enough to want to stick around, or maybe you're going to the wrong university, maybe there's a second tier university to go after folks, or maybe you're better suited to get somebody who's got a couple of years of experience out that you might want to, that's already had the initial investment, because it's expensive to bring somebody in from university and train them and have them go. So I think you have to look at all those different tolerances and what makes sense for your business. I find if they're not moving around a lot, and they don't necessarily need to be CEO within their first 3 years, but maybe the first 5 years they're happy. But with early in career and university hires, you have to keep them constantly interested, engaged, and moving. And you may not have a business that allows you to do that, or the time investment to go do that. So I think it's a great question you have to evaluate. Absolutely. We have a mixed bag. We keep some, like I've got some that have been interns that are now senior managers and leaders, and I've got others that are here for a year or two. So I really try and get choiceful about where are the schools where I'm having the best retention, the schools where maybe they had to work a little bit harder because maybe they weren't the top student, but they have a ton of grit and perseverance and are smart but just didn't get the opportunity. And then how do I think about moving them around more effectively so they get that broader range of experience in the company and makes them stick around longer. Hi.
So when you're building your career, your future employee pipeline,
Yeah.
what are some suggestions on keeping that future employee interested until you actually have an opening that you can put them into?
Great. So our question was, thank you, how do you keep people interested as you build that future pipeline? So a couple of ways. One is I'm always a big believer, and I think I mentioned in my discussion, is that we bring people in for like a reception from 5 to 7. We did one recently with our early in career employee resource group I'm the executive sponsor of. So we invited a bunch of people through LinkedIn, friends, family, whatever, across the bay where we live, and had them come in and do 2 hours where I had a board member come in and talk about early in career journeys as a board member, what to think about, how to think about moving in your career. We had breakout sessions on everything from financial wellness to health and mindfulness to how to navigate your career, how to market yourself. And it was, cost us like maybe $1,000, $2,000 for tchotchkes and some Chipotle, because everyone loves Chipotle. And they had 2 hours to really learn, get immersed, and meet people. And I had recruiters around. And the recruiters happened to sit at some of the tables and talk about Symantec a bit and provide business cards. So what we do is we try and create those kind of lunch and learns or evening events or whatever that are more around learn about a particular skill set, but oh, by the way, come learn about our company, come on our campus, find that we're really interesting people. So I think about it that way, is how do you create those types of coffee dates, learning symposiums. bringing people together, talk about a particular, like bringing an outside speaker and investing in the chance to have people learn about a particular skill set. That's how you create that ongoing relationship. And then I think in terms of university relations, is you get on campus and you are offering internships, you're doing lunch and learns there as well, so they see that as a destination employer that really is a cool place to go and want to work. But it becomes a management discipline. Because I know all of us are really busy, but if you can set aside every week an hour to go network with somebody and build a relationship from either a retention or recruiting or a future opportunity, it's going to pay back in dividends. But it takes work. You got to write down in your planner or on your notes to make certain you do it, because it's easy to get busy in the day-to-day stuff. Any other questions? Okay, great.
Could you speak up about the diversity inclusion? You mentioned it. The industry, I think, is making progress in the area of females, but I mean, you just got to look around the room. It is not a diverse group. How does an industry, I am being very careful on how I word this.
I know, this is very
attract
sensitive. But I applaud you for the question.
Non-traditional insurance people.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So when you work in a global environment, gender is the easiest one to typically manage, but even people are now claiming non-binary. So sometimes people don't even self-declare what gender they affiliate with, let alone trying to find underrepresented minorities outside of the U.S., let alone in the U.S. And so I think it's partly a math game, and it's your ability to kind of have a wider armature about bringing on people that may not be perfectly suited to the resume or the job description. So from a math perspective, I believe it's incumbent that when you look at a market like you would look at customers, you should look at what's the available market availability. Like, do I have enough women in the market for that particular job, or am I out looking for, the unicorn everybody else is looking for? So it's good to understand the degree of difficulty of what's available in that market for that particular skill set. So we have a big challenge related to women engineers. And so where can you best find women engineers? Maybe it's not for us in California, it could be in Boston, it could be in Austin, it could be in Warsaw. So how do you think about your addressable market? And then two, how do you think about not always hiring at 100% of the job description? And I'm not saying settling, but I'm saying maybe that person has the capacity, the potential, or the learning agility, and I'm going to take a bet on them and invest on them because they're about 70% there for the job, and I'm going to help them close that gap by developing them and scaffolding them so they are successful in the firm. So I think you have to sometimes take some chances, but by taking chances, you have to invest in that chance. You just can't bring somebody in and expect them to be successful if they don't have all of what you need, but if they've got the potential, the grit, the perseverance. What kind of learning capabilities can you put into that system? So it's a math game and it's an investment game. And then what I've seen companies do is they bring in a bunch of diverse candidates and none of them stick around. So you have to make certain you've got the right kind of culture, the right kind of learning culture, what way people will embrace different perspectives in the room. Because if you bring a bunch of people in with different ideas and none of them are heard, they're going to leave and probably leave you with a worse reputation than you had before you brought them on. So it's a hard one, but I do believe if it starts at the top, so if you've got top leadership invested in this, and then you give managers and employees an understanding of what that looks like, you can begin to build that muscle, so to speak. But everyone's going after the same talent. We're all wanting to have more diversity. We're all wanting to have a better reflection of the kind of products that are important to the consumer base. And so with that, you're going to have to bring different types of talents in. It's all about your ability to manage through that in a way where people want to come and stick around and not just get hired and then leave. Hopefully that answered your question. And thank you for asking that. That's always kind of a tough one. Hi.
So I've heard you mention grit a couple of times in something that you look for, and I'm curious if it's anecdotal in how you assess that based on their past experience, like you mentioned, or if there's something specific that you use to assess a client's grit.
That's a great question. So she wanted to know about grit. And I grew up in West Virginia, so I know all about grit. I learned about working hard and grit. And I'm thrilled for my how I was brought up, because I was brought up with a really good work ethic. So work hard, good things will happen to you. But how we look at it is we do it behaviorally. So we talk a lot when we do our interviews around give me a time when you had a tough problem and how did you go solve for it? Or I find, honestly, people who have a lot of difficult times and work through it are really interesting to me because it wasn't just handed to them, so they have a better chance to kind of fail and get back up and do it better. So a lot of questions relate to, tell me of a time when you weren't successful, tell me of a time when you had something that was insurmountable, how did you deal with it? Tell me about your worst failure and why, and what did you learn from it? One of my favorite questions is, because it shows me about whether someone's open up for feedback, is tell me of a time when you got some constructive feedback. What was it, and what did you take from it, and what did you change as a result of it? And I always strike out the person who says, I've never gotten any negative feedback, I have nothing to recall, because then you know they're not open or learning to it. So I try to use behavioral examples. Of course, resumes are great, but I think resumes are just words on paper till you actually get a chance to understand what that person brings to the table. It's a good question. Any other questions? All right, well, listen, I know you guys have a really packed agenda, and I got to tell you, when I looked at the content of what you guys are going to be going through the next couple of days, I'm super impressed, and I think you're going to learn a lot. I think it's been really thoughtfully put together, and I want to thank you for your attention today. This will be posted for you, so you have it available, and if you have any questions, I'll be around for a while, and wish you all the best as you spend the next couple of days learning and connecting. So thank you.
Running down to